So hello and welcome to the first vlog for Tour for Becky. It's a little bit over a week out for the start of the adventure, and I decided that I would modernize this time. On the first leg from Massachusetts to Minnesota, I did keep a daily written blog with pictures, which was nice, but that's so 2011 these days. So I'm switching to the blog format, and I promise to try to make them short and as information packed as I possibly can. If you're interested in making sure that you receive all the updates, you can just follow at the blog at the website tourforbecky.org and just hit the follow button. And I believe you'll get these. And if you don't, let me know. So today I'm excited to be kicking off the vlog by introducing a new strategic partner for the ride. It's an organization called Trees for the Future. And I actually did some work with this organization back in 2006 when I started the environmental club at my school. We were able to plant thousands of trees. I still have a certificate somewhere by selling fair trade coffee and chocolate. And we were kind of doing carbon offsetting before it was a thing for most people. And I had meant to be in contact with them um, pre-pandemic when last year I was going to ride, and then things got a little bit scrambled. But I'm very glad to be back in contact with them, and I think they're going to end up being the main CO2 offset resource that we use for a variety of reasons that I hope will become very clear to you in our conversation. Today I'm speaking with Lindsay Cobb, who is a marketing communications manager, and Alexa Castellano, who is involved with the giving portion of Trees for the Future. So welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Many people don't know necessarily your organization, so I was wondering if you could just do a very brief thing about the history and the mission of your organization.
Sure. Trees for the Future is a registered 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We work out of DC in the United States, but our offices are across sub-Saharan Africa, and our impact is taking place in sub-Saharan Africa. We have been established since 1989. And in that time, we've planted more than 200 million trees. At last count, I think we were at 218 million. Sometimes it's hard to keep track when it's that high of a number, right? So we're at over 200 million trees around the world, and we've done that through sustainable agriculture and agroforestry training. So we work very closely with farmers in the developing world to give them the tools, knowledge, resources they need to basically grow food in a more sustainable way that involves trees rather than it involves planting trees rather than clearing trees, which is very typical in modern agriculture. And so the root of our program is called the forest garden approach. And the forest garden is just a strategic agroforestry system, typically about an acre in size on the average farmer's land. And those include 2,500 to 4,000 trees at any given time once they're established. And those trees are agroforestry trees, fruit trees, nut trees. And so they're all serving a purpose, whether it's to feed the family, to sell at market, to earn an income, or as we approach World Environment Day tomorrow, something that's on everybody's mind is protecting the planet. And so those trees are accomplishing so many different things at the same time and so many benefits, both for the farmer and for the planet. And at the same time, sequestering carbon, both in the tree and in the soil. So there are so many benefits and impacts that we can chat with you more throughout this chat, Aaron. But yeah, basically the goal at Trees for the Future is to plant trees and change lives. And so we help farmers end hunger and poverty for themselves while restoring their land at the same time.
It's great. I mean, there's a lot of things that I really like about Trees for the Future. And one of them is that it's a very long-standing organization with a lot of experience. Obviously, the number of trees you've planted and the way you're going about the work is really incredible because I think a lot of people don't realize with probably trees and restorative agriculture, we could really make a huge dent in climate change. It may be the biggest factors because so much of our land is in this clear-cut monocrop kind of uh, uh, farming, which is not at all good for the environment. So these are some of the most powerful weapons. So I'm really glad that those are what you guys do.
Us too.
So tell me, as you know, one of the goals for Ride for Becky is to sequester or mitigate at least 1,000 tons of carbon. Can you tell me a little bit about how the way that you account? I know it's not all that you do, and we'll talk more about the other benefits, and as you already have, but how do you account for the actual carbon that you're sequestering?
Absolutely. And I was just pulling up my note because I didn't want to leave the leave the screen because we do account for all of this and we take it very seriously. I think that's something that I think Alexa and I both and our colleagues have so much faith in our project and our programs because we see it from behind the scenes and we take it very seriously, commissioning studies, making sure with universities, with experts, making sure that what we're doing is having this long-standing impact that we know it to have, but we want to back that up with the numbers, right? And make sure that our donors have faith that what we're doing is working. And so each trees, I always have to read it because I don't want to mess it up. Each forest garden captures about 145 metric tons of carbon dioxide every 20 years. And so we can't easily, simply cut and dry give a sequestration number to one tree as soon as it goes in the ground because there's so many different aspects at play, different factors at play. And so what we do is see how much carbon and carbon dioxide a forest garden and the soil that it is on can sequester. And so those numbers come from a study that we commissioned several years ago and with the University of Michigan's forestry department. And they basically helped us calculate by some very internationally held standards of carbon capture technology how much carbon is going into the trees and into the ground over a period of time.
Yeah, and that 20-year period is really important too, because the longer the trees in the ground, sorry, the longer the trees in the ground, the more carbon dioxide it can sequester from the atmosphere. And so that's another integral part of what we do is we work with farmers who plant trees on their land, and by them having such a stake in the well-being of the tree in their land, they're encouraged to keep and to take care of the tree for longer. And so the longer the tree gets to be in the ground and grow, it sequesters more carbon, which amplifies its impact.
Wonderful. Now, in the introduction, Lindsay, you spoke a little bit more broadly about some of the impacts that your projects have, and we talked about the mission and the history. But would you speak a little bit more about, okay, carbon, which is in some ways what we're looking for, at least in terms of a metric. But I know there's a lot of other important, community building and economic impacts. So would you talk a little about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and Alexa touched on it too. The power of the program is that the farmer has a vested interest in the success of the forest garden. And so when a farming family is growing just corn on all of their land, all of their stake is in corn. And as many of us might consider finances, we know that we're supposed to diversify our finances. The same thing is true for farming. And we've really lost that over the last several generations of farming globally because of industrialization and because of this idea that we need to get bigger and grow more and intensify what we're growing. I won't say one thing on, one way or the other on that, but what we run into with smallholder farmers who are living in the developing world who don't have a safety net of crop insurance or government subsidies is they lose everything if they lose that one crop. And so by diversifying what they grow, look at all of the environmental impacts. It's sequestering carbon, it's improving biodiversity, it's leading to less deforestation because they're not going into old growth forests to cut down trees to create fuel wood. All of these environmental impacts are fantastic. And then on the flip side, there's all those socioeconomic impacts because the farmer now has protection from the unknown. And so whether it's a drought, whether it's pests, whether it's, civil unrest, we work in Central African Republic where there's a lot of violence. So there's all of these things that the farmer has to be worried about every day of, I need to get this one crop grown into market and to make sure I can make money off of it to feed my family. And when we diversify what we grow through the forest garden approach, all of that really goes away. They have enough growing on their property in a 1 acre space or less that is providing food year round to feed their family. It's providing nutritious food. So not just corn, not just peanuts, not one grain, but dozens of fruits, vegetables, legumes, all of these different healthy foods. And then they're also able to sell all of that as well and make a profit from that and do what they will with that money to make a better life for themselves and for their families. And so all of those sub impacts of being able to send your child to school because now you have the money to afford the uniform and the books. So now your 4 children are in school and able to break that cycle of poverty that the family has been experiencing for maybe generations. There's also other impacts as far as women's empowerment. We have a requirement in our program to have at least 30% of our participants of each project must be women, because we want to make sure that they have a seat at the table when we talk about regenerative agriculture. And it's really exciting to see, a lot of times it's more than 30% women in these projects, and they become the leaders of the projects because they're women. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
And so it's all of these sub impacts that are working together to create a truly sustainable systemic change in these farming communities.
Yeah, and if we know anything about climate change, is that it can lead to a lot of unpredictable disasters, unpredictable weather patterns. And so as the issue of climate change gets worse, and the people who are most vulnerable to those impacts are specifically farmers in the global South, we're helping them to have a more predictable income and predictable source for their food, and also be able to empower not only their families, but their entire communities through forest gardens.
Yeah, I really love how it's really a 360 impact, because the carbon's great. And again, that's what we're measuring right now, but everything else comes along with it. And that's quite a deal. So tell me a little bit about the sort of one question that people sometimes have, and sometimes for good reason, is they want to know what's the sort of the efficiency of their donation. How much actually goes to these projects that you describe, just so people have an idea of what that's like.
Alexa, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So from all of the donations we receive, 80% of those go to the field, to our programs. The rest help us to continue our mission, to grow, to feed our operations. What people might not know about Trees for the Future is that we have 20 employees, more or less, headquartered here in the US, but we have over 200 employees throughout sub-Saharan Africa who work directly with the farmers. And so that other 20% really helps us to manage and to directly go into those communities to teach and to grow what we do. But otherwise, yes, about 80% of donations will go to the field. But sorry, just to emphasize, through the strategies that we've created and through our programs, every single dollar that goes to our mission really does help to support what we do. And it has a far-reaching impact much farther than just that $1, because it continues to work onto itself. That tree grows and produces food that then can feed a family. I think that, it's incredible to see how even the smallest donations can make the biggest impact.
Yeah. And some people, a lot of people we know, like to know how many trees they plant with each donation. And so our metric is 25 cents plants a tree, but we don't like to leave it at that, because 25 cents does so much more than plant a tree. So if you look at other tree planting related organizations, they often have to spend a little bit more, or significantly more than that to plant one tree. But because of the nature of our program, because it's rooted in education, because the farmers are planting the trees from seed, we're not having to ship these trees places, grow them in greenhouses, move them, all of these different things. It is a truly sustainable model of, let's source the seeds locally, teach the farmers how to grow the trees, and then the farmers are growing the trees themselves, right? And so that keeps costs really low. But then also that 25 cents a tree wraps into it everything else. So when you donate 25 cents, you're planting a tree, but you're providing the training, you're providing the tools, you're providing the watering cans, the wheelbarrows, you're helping us keep up the demonstration sites where these farmers go to learn from staff. And then as Alexa mentioned, funding the overhead of the organization as well.
Well, and also I noticed that on your website, there's about every certification on the bottom in terms of transparency and charity navigator and all those kinds of things. So you can rest assured that the money is being well spent. Um, the last thing I wanted to ask about is that we had to have this meeting a little bit later in the week because I understand that the organization was involved with some meetings at the UN. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We are a partner of UN actually for years now. We've been a partner of UNITAR. It's their training and research arm at the United Nations, and they basically have helped us create our training materials. And we created our training materials, but they've helped us get them out there. And they basically, gave it their stamp of approval of the forest garden training materials that we share with farmers and the public for free, are basically solid A+ work. And so as a partner of UNITAR, we've had that longstanding relationship with the United Nations. But now as we look ahead to World Environment Day tomorrow, that is actually the launch of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And simply put, that's the next 10 years being spent on a huge, collective global effort to restore, protect, and revitalize our ecosystems. And so we're an official implementing partner of the UN Decade. And so, like I said, that launches tomorrow. Earlier this week, we had a panel on it, and we'd be happy to share that link. Well, I know we already shared it with you, Erin, but we can send it over and share it with your friends and viewers, where we spoke with experts from the International Rescue Committee, from Great Green Wall, as this UN event to basically help people understand the importance of training and partnerships in reaching these goals of restoring the ecosystem, and in our case, restoring farmland specific ecosystems.
Yeah, I mean, so many important points, and part of it is that yes, it's the tree, but it's the training, and it's breaking the cycle of poverty. It's so much more than the tree, and so much more than the carbon. So um, uh, we will be happy to be donating to Trees for the Future, and to continue with all the good impacts that your good work does. And thank you very much for your time. And I will be including there will be a lot of other information in terms of links and so forth, to more documentation on the website as well.
Fantastic. Erin, thank you so much for having us and for your support, and good luck on your ride.